Hello everybody and welcome to yet another video on the Warlock specific guide to each encounter in Blackrock Foundry on normal and heroic difficulty. As always, this is Draven Rennick from the US Sargeras server, bringing you some recommendations for Oregorger. Today's spec will be Demonology. This guide aims to cover the talents, both offensive and defensive, glyphs, both offensive and defensive, useful add-ons, Warlock specific tips as they relate to the mechanics, the opener, general DPS knowledge, the final 25% of the fight, and Warlock specific tips to boost your DPS. If you'd like to skip to any particular portion of the fight, feel free to click on any of the annotations you see on your screen now. With that said, let's get started. Let's take a look at the talents for this fight. For this fight, there's really only one true choice to do competitive DPS, Demonic Servitude with Grimoire of Service. As such, you should look to take Grimoire of Service, Archimonde's Darkness, and Demonic Servitude. As far as defensive talents go, this is one of those fights that could really go either way. You can opt to take the on-use cooldowns, if you fear you might get rolled over, or you just want to play it safe, or take the passive 30% damage mitigation, if you feel quite confident that you can dodge the rolls and quickly get out of wretched Blackrock. That said, if you're not entirely comfortable with the fight, or confident that you can quickly avoid the environmental hazards, then you should take Soul Leech and Sacrificial Pact, leaving Unending Resolve available as a damage mitigation cooldown. However, if you're confident you can dodge all the environmental hazard, it's best that you take Soul Leech and Soul Link, with the glyph of Eternal Resolve for a total 30% passive damage mitigation. Let's move on to glyphs. Outside of possibly using Eternal Resolve for passive damage mitigation, there's really only one other glyph to consider picking up, and that's Glyph of Demonic Circle. This glyph will allow you to use your personal portal slightly more frequently. You shouldn't need to use it twice. However, depending on where you place your demonic gateway, it may be quite worthwhile to take this glyph. That said, I'd recommend the standard. Glyph of Life Tap to keep as little stress on your healers as possible, Glyph of Hellstone since there's really no large spikes in damage on this fight, and either Glyph of Siphon Life or Glyph of Demonic Circle, depending on your individual needs. Let's move on to useful add-ons. Some form of a boss mods add-on will be remarkably useful for you on this fight. I found it to be most useful to have a countdown when Wretched Blackrock is coming out, so there's no excuse for me to accidentally get tunneled by it. Let's take a look at Warlock specific tips as they're related to the mechanics. As mentioned beforehand, your Demonic Circle is going to be particularly useful for you on this fight. Place this ability on whichever lane you will be close to when the roll phase starts. Some people like to place it on the outside to dodge the inner rolls. However, I prefer to place it in such a way that if the boss were to roll down my inside aisle, he'd have to roll 2 more times before he could even potentially hit me. If for any reason your group has either an insufficient number of interrupts, or you simply have unreliable interrupters, there's no reason you can't step in and lend a hand. Your Doomguard's interrupt, usable through the command demon ability, is off the global cooldown and can be used mid-cast, so make sure you use it if your group needs that. Moving on to the opener. You should be using Demonic Servitude, so do the following. Begin by pre-potting and pre-casting Soulfire at the boss when your group's countdown gets to 5 seconds. The timing on this cast is actually the most important factor in a solid opener. Because of the nature of the present trinkets, if you can get a cast off and in the air before the boss is pulled, then what you'll see is that your trinkets and ring will proc a second time immediately after they expire initially. Follow that cast up with a Shadow Bolt, since you technically shouldn't be in combat yet since your Soulfire is traveling through the air. Once that goes off, you'll be in combat, so use all your cooldowns, Dark Soul, Summon Doomguard, any on-use trinkets, etc. You can macro all these together for convenience, and begin your standard opener. That would mean use Hand of Gul'dan, followed by Corruption, 2 Shadow Bolts, 3 if your group used Heroism or Bloodlust, another Hand of Gul'dan, Metaform, Chaos Wave if you have the 4-piece tier 17 bonus, and Doom. Burn any and all available Demonic Fury on Soulfire, Chaos Wave, or Touch of Chaos, in that order. Let's move on to general DPS knowledge. Since you're likely to be using Double Servitude, the biggest DPS boost you'll have is pulling your Molten Core procs from the Dark Souls available. If you notice that you're going to cap your Demonic Fury, or your Molten Core procs, just make sure to jump into meta and dump some of your Fury on either excess Molten Core procs, if you've got more than 6 or 7, or on Touch of Chaos. Additionally, make sure you maintain your Doom and Corruption on the boss at all times. This brings us to the final 25% of the fight. The final 25% of the fight becomes very straightforward. Spam Soulfire continuously. Make sure to use your second potion for when you have Dark Soul active. If you won't have Dark Soul active for the remainder of the fight, then try to line your second potion up with your strongest DPS procs. Make sure you continue to pay attention to mechanics and assist in interrupting if needed. Lastly, we have Warlock specific tips to boost your DPS. The thing that sets the high-end raiders apart is how they handle the roll phase. There are two primary ways you can handle this aspect of the fight. First, you can simply tunnel the ore crates and make that your primary focus. Use Doom on the ones that are going to live for about 15 seconds, which are usually the ones in obscure places in the outer lanes, and cast Corruption on all the others. Additionally, you'll want to ensure you maintain both dots on the boss as he rolls about. After dotting the nearby crates, you will simply go about continuing your single target rotation on those crates. When one dies, simply move on to the next one. However, don't go so far out of your way that you spend more time running after far crates than you do casting. That would simply become a DPS loss. Now dissimilarly, if you're simply looking to keep your numbers high, or if the group kills the crates rather quickly, you can set yourself in a position so that you can almost continually cast on the boss. The lane immediately left of where the boss spawns is pretty ideal for this, given that you can reach the boss in about 2/3 of the room from there. You'll still want to dot up every crate you can, however, instead of dumping your fury into them, you'd simply tunnel the boss. The con to this is that your group loses crate damage. The pro is that you should never get hit, since you're keeping your attention on the boss, he should never catch you by surprise. Make the decision that you feel is best for your group. Additionally, you can take advantage of your pet's ranged attack, assuming you're playing the Demonic Servitude setup. Begin the fight with your Doomguard on passive. As you engage the boss, use a petattack macro to set your pet to only attack the boss. Make sure you don't have any pet assist lines macroed into your abilities. This will ensure your demon stays on the boss 100% of the time. Well, that concludes this guide to Normal and Heroic Oregorger. Thanks for watching. If there's a particular fight in BRF that you'd like to see next, let me know by leaving a comment below. I'll see you all in the next video.